The day Tessa Barrett's worn-out sneakers splashed through a puddle outside the Riverside Diner, soaking her only pair of work socks, she decided the universe had a personal vendetta against her. She pushed through the back door with her shoulder, already 15 minutes late for her double shift, and found her manager Marco glaring at the clock like it had personally insulted him. "Traffic," she lied, unwilling to admit she'd walked the 3 miles because her car had finally given up the ghost last Tuesday. Marco grunted and jerked his thumb toward the dining room. "Table 6 has been waiting. Don't mess this up, Barrett. We need good tippers today." Tessa grabbed her apron, tied it around her waist, and plastered on the smile she'd perfected over 5 years of serving coffee and eggs to people who rarely looked her in the eye. The diner smelled like grease and burnt toast, but it was honest work, and honest work was hard to come by when you'd grown up in the trailer park on the east side of town with a high school diploma and nothing else. She approached table 6 with her notepad ready, her smile firmly in place, and found herself looking into the warmest brown eyes she'd ever seen. The man sitting there wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, and he glanced up from his menu with an expression that seemed genuinely pleased to see her, like she wasn't just the waitress, but an actual human being worth noticing. "Good morning," he said, and his voice had this quality to it that made her think of good whiskey and late-night conversations. "What do you recommend?" Most customers asked what was cheapest or fastest. Nobody ever asked what she recommended. "The pancakes are actually decent," Tessa said, caught off guard by the question. "And the hash browns are better than they have any right to be in a place like this." He laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'll take both then, and coffee. Lots of coffee." "Rough morning," something like that. He closed the menu and looked at her again, really looked at her, and Tessa felt something shift in her chest. "I'm Lucas, by the way." She shouldn't have been surprised. People introduce themselves sometimes. But the way he said it, like it mattered, like he wanted her to remember his name, that was different. "Tessa," she replied, writing down his order even though she'd already memorized it. "I'll get that right out for you." She could feel his eyes on her as she walked away, not in a creepy way, but in a way that made her hyper-aware of the faded state of her uniform, and the fact that her ponytail was probably a mess. When she brought his food, he asked her how long she'd worked there. When she refilled his coffee, he asked if she was from Riverside. By the time he finished eating, they'd had 3 conversations that felt more substantial than most exchanges she'd had in months. "What time do you get off work?" Lucas asked as she cleared his plate. Tessa's guard went up immediately. She'd learned to be careful about men who asked questions like that. "Why?" "Because I'd like to take you to dinner. Somewhere that isn't here, no offense to your excellent hash browns." She should have said no. She should have made up a boyfriend or claimed she had plans. Instead, she heard herself say, "I finish at 8. His smile could have powered the entire diner. "I'll pick you up." "I'll meet you somewhere," Tessa countered. She wasn't getting into cars with strangers, no matter how warm their eyes were. They settled on a small Italian place 2 blocks away, and Lucas left her a tip that made her blink twice at the receipt to make sure she'd counted the zeros correctly. $50 on a $12 check. Either he was generous or he'd made a mistake, and when she looked up to flag him down, he was already gone. The rest of her shift crawled by with the speed of continental drift. Tessa messed up 2 orders because she couldn't stop thinking about Lucas and his easy smile and the way he'd listened when she talked like her words actually mattered. She told herself not to get excited. He probably wouldn't show up. Men like him didn't take out girls like her. Girls with worn shoes and tired eyes who smelled like fryer oil and had to count their tips to make rent. But at 8:15, when she walked into Antonelli's with her hair down and wearing the one nice dress she owned, a simple blue thing she'd found at Goodwill, Lucas was already there. He stood when he saw her, which nobody had ever done before, and pulled out her chair like they were in some old movie. "You came," he said, and he sounded genuinely relieved. "You thought I wouldn't?" "I thought you might have better options." Tessa laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. Trust me, my Friday night options usually involve laundry and Netflix. They ordered wine, which Tessa rarely drank because it seemed like an unnecessary expense, and pasta that tasted like something out of a dream. Lucas asked her questions about her life, and she found herself telling him things she normally kept locked down tight. About growing up with a single mom who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't quite make ends meet. About her younger brother who'd gotten a full ride to state college, the first person in their family to go. About her own dreams of maybe someday going back to school for nursing. Why nursing? Lucas asked, twirling pasta around his fork. Because I'm good with people, I think. And I want to do something that matters, something that helps. He nodded like he understood completely. That's a good reason. What about you? Tessa asked, realizing she'd been monopolizing the conversation. What do you do? Lucas hesitated for just a fraction of a second. I work in manufacturing, family business. That sounds stable. It has its moments. He changed the subject smoothly, asking her about her favorite books, her favorite movies, the places she'd like to travel if she could go anywhere in the world. They talked until the restaurant started putting chairs up on tables, and when Lucas walked her to her bus stop, Tessa felt like she was floating. He didn't try to kiss her, just asked if he could see her again, and when she said yes, his smile lit up the entire street. Tomorrow. He asked hopefully, I work until 3. I'll take you to the park. We can watch the sunset. Tessa went home that night and lay in bed staring at the water-stained ceiling of her tiny apartment, wondering if this was real or if she'd wake up and discover she'd imagined the whole thing. But the next day, Lucas was waiting outside the diner at 3:05 and he had a picnic basket in his hand. Over the next 3 weeks, Tessa fell in love. She didn't mean to, and she tried to protect herself, but Lucas made it impossible. He showed up at the diner every morning and ordered breakfast. He took her on dates that ranged from fancy restaurants to walks along the river to a terrible horror movie that made them both laugh instead of scream. He listened when she talked and remembered small details she mentioned in passing. He never pressured her for more than she was ready to give, but his kisses made her knees weak, and his hands were gentle when he touched her face. The only strange thing was how careful he was about certain topics. He never talked much about his work, and he never invited her to his place. They always met at hers or somewhere neutral, and while Tessa tried not to be paranoid, she couldn't help wondering what he was hiding. Maybe he still lived with his parents. Maybe he had roommates he was embarrassed about. She told herself it didn't matter that she was being paranoid, but the questions nagged at her one morning, about a month into whatever they were doing. Marco called her into his office before her shift started. "We got a visit from corporate yesterday," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Apparently, we're getting some investment, new owners buying into the franchise." "What does that mean for us?" Tessa asked, her stomach dropping. She couldn't afford to lose this job, means we'll be renovating. They want to turn this place into something upscale. "But don't worry, you'll keep your position. Actually, they specifically mentioned wanting to keep the current staff." Marco paused, shuffling papers on his desk. "The guy who's buying in is Lucas Whitmore. You know him." Tessa's blood went cold. "What? Lucas Whitmore, big-time billionaire. Owns Whitmore Industries, that huge manufacturing conglomerate. They make everything from car parts to industrial equipment. He's been buying up small businesses all over the state." Marco looked at her curiously. "You've gone pale. You okay?" She wasn't okay. Her mind was racing, connecting dots she should have seen before. The expensive clothes Lucas wore that looked casual but probably cost more than her monthly rent. The way he never seemed worried about money. The fact that he could afford to eat at the diner every single day and leave ridiculous tips. The family business in manufacturing he'd mentioned so casually. Tessa made it through her shift on autopilot, and when Lucas walked in at his usual time, she couldn't even look at him. She sent another waitress to take his order and hid in the kitchen, feeling stupid and used and angry. He found her anyway. Of course he did. "Tessa." His voice behind her made her spine stiffen. What's wrong? She turned around and she knew her eyes were blazing. When were you going to tell me? Understanding dawned on his face, followed by something that looked like panic. Tell you what? Don't play dumb, Lucas. Or should I call you Mr. Whitmore? Is that more appropriate when you're talking to the help? He reached for her, but she stepped back. It's not like that. Then what is it like? You've been coming here for a month, pretending to be some regular guy, all while you're a billionaire slumming it with the poor girl from the wrong side of town. What is this, some kind of experiment? Are you writing a book about how the other half lives? No. His voice was firm, almost angry. That's not what this is at all. Then explain it to me, because from where I'm standing, you've been lying to me since the day we met. Marco appeared in the doorway. Take this outside. Now. Tessa ripped off her apron and stormed out the back door, Lucas following close behind. The alley smelled like garbage and old fryer oil, and it felt appropriate for the moment. I didn't lie to you, Lucas said, his hands shoved in his pockets. I just didn't correct your assumptions. That's the same thing. No, it's not. He took a breath, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. Do you know what it's like to never know if people like you for who you are or for what you have? To wonder if every conversation, every relationship, every friendship is built on the expectation of what you can give them. Oh, poor billionaire, Tessa shot back. Must be so hard having all that money. I'm not asking for sympathy, I'm trying to explain. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. When I walked into that diner a month ago, I was having the worst day of my life. I'd just gotten out of a board meeting where people who are supposed to trust me spent 3 hours questioning every decision I make. My ex-girlfriend had sold a story to the tabloids about our relationship. My own mother called to ask if I could donate more money to her charity gala, and I just wanted one place where I could be a normal person for an hour. Tessa felt her anger wavering but held onto it stubbornly. So you used me. I didn't use you. He stepped closer, and she didn't move away this time. You were the first real thing I'd encountered in months. You looked at me like I was just a guy, not a bank account. You laughed at my jokes because they were funny, not because you wanted something from me. And when I asked you to dinner, you said yes because you wanted to, not because you thought I could buy you things. You should have told me. I know. He looked miserable. I kept meaning to, but I was terrified, because every time I've told someone the truth about who I am, everything changes. They start acting different. They start expecting things, and I didn't want that to happen with you. Tessa's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Did you buy the diner because of me? Partially, Lucas admitted. But also because I believe in investing in community businesses, and this place has good bones. I want to make it better, not shut it down. I want the people who work here to have better wages and better working conditions. He paused. I want you to not have to walk 3 miles to work because your car broke down. How did you know about that? I'm observant, and I care about you, Tessa, more than I've cared about anyone in a very long time. She wanted to stay angry. Anger was safe. Anger protected her from getting hurt. But when she looked at Lucas, all she saw was the same man who'd made her laugh for the past month, who'd held her hand during the scary movie, who'd kissed her like she was precious. I don't fit in your world, she said quietly. I don't fit in my world either, that's the whole point. Lucas took her hand, and this time she let him. I don't want someone who fits perfectly into the life that was planned out for me before I was born. I want someone real. Someone who challenges me and makes me laugh and doesn't care that I have money because they like me anyway. I do like you, Tessa admitted. That's what makes this so scary. I'm scared too. They stood in that garbage-scented alley, holding hands, and Tessa made a decision. She could walk away right now, protect herself, keep her safe little life that never surprised her. Or she could take a risk on something that felt impossibly big and terrifying and real. If we do this, she said slowly, if we really try, you have to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets, no more letting me assume things that aren't true. I need honesty, Lucas, even when it's uncomfortable. I promise. He squeezed her hand. And I need something from you too. What? Give us a real chance. not as a billionaire and a waitress, but as Lucas and Tessa. Two people who met in a diner and liked each other. Can you do that? Tessa thought about it for a long moment, then nodded. I can try. He kissed her then, right there in the alley, and it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. The next few months were an adjustment. Lucas introduced her to his world slowly, taking her to charity galas where her Goodwill dresses didn't quite measure up until he insisted on taking her shopping, not as a sugar daddy, but as a boyfriend who wanted her to feel comfortable. Tessa met his business partners and his society friends, and while some of them looked down their noses at her, Lucas never let it slide. He defended her fiercely, and eventually, people learned to be respectful or face his wrath. Tessa introduced Lucas to her world too. He met her mother, who was predictably suspicious until Lucas spent an entire afternoon helping her fix her leaking roof. He met her brother David, who grilled him about his intentions until Lucas laughed and said he intended to keep dating Tessa for as long as she'd let him. He came to her tiny apartment and never once made her feel like it wasn't good enough. The diner renovation happened in stages. True to his word, Lucas didn't shut it down or fire anyone. Instead, he upgraded the equipment, repainted the walls, and gave everyone raises. Marco got promoted to general manager of the entire franchise. Tessa kept waitressing because she actually enjoyed it, though Lucas kept trying to convince her to go back to school. I could pay for it, he offered one night over dinner at his place, a penthouse apartment downtown that had initially made Tessa's jaw drop. I know you could, but if I go back, I want to do it on my own terms. Why? There's no shame in accepting help. Tessa set down her fork. Because I need to know I can do it myself. My whole life, people have assumed I need rescuing. I need to prove, mostly to myself, that I'm capable. Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. You're the most capable person I know. You don't have anything to prove. Maybe not to you. But I need to prove it to me. He understood, because that was the thing about Lucas. He always understood. So Tessa started taking night classes at the community college, working toward prerequisites for the nursing program. It was exhausting, working full-time and going to school, but Lucas supported her in every way that didn't involve money. He quizzed her on anatomy. He brought her coffee during late-night study sessions. He celebrated when she aced her exams and held her when she cried over the ones she didn't. 6 months into their relationship, Lucas took her to meet his parents at their estate upstate. Tessa had been dreading it for weeks, certain that they'd take one look at her and demand their son date someone more suitable. The Whitmore mansion was exactly as intimidating as she'd feared, all rolling lawns and old money elegance. Lucas's mother, Patricia, was a tall woman with perfect posture and calculating eyes. His father, Leonard, was gruff and businesslike. They invited Tessa into their parlor, actually called it a parlor, and proceeded to interview her like she was applying for a job. So you're a waitress, Patricia said, making it sound like an accusation. Yes, madam, and a student. How convenient that you met my son. Lucas's hand tightened on Tessa's knee. Mother. I'm just saying, darling, it's quite a coincidence. Tessa had spent 6 months learning to navigate Lucas's world, but she'd never forgotten where she came from. She looked Patricia Whitmore straight in the eye and said, I didn't know who your son was when I met him, and if I had, I probably wouldn't have gone out with him. That got Leonard's attention. Why not? Because people with money make me nervous. They expect things to be easy, and life isn't easy. But Lucas isn't like that. He's kind and hardworking, and he treats people with respect regardless of their bank account. That's why I'm dating him. Not because of the money, but in spite of it. There was a long silence. Then Leonard started laughing, a big booming sound that filled the room. I like her, Lucas. She's got spine. Patricia looked less convinced, but over the course of the weekend, Tessa watched her thaw slightly. Particularly after Tessa helped the housekeeper when she spilled something, not because she had to, but because it was the right thing to do. By the time they left, Patricia hugged her goodbye, and while it wasn't warm exactly, it wasn't hostile either. That went better than expected, Lucas said as they drove back to the city. Your mom hates me, My mom is protective. She'll come around. My dad already loves you. Your dad loves anyone who stands up to your mom. Lucas laughed and took her hand. I love you. It was the first time he'd said it. Tessa's breath caught in her throat and she looked at him, this man who'd walked into her life and changed everything. I love you too, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. A year after they met, Lucas proposed. Not with a flashy public display or a huge diamond, though the ring he gave her was beautiful in a simple, classic way. He proposed in the diner where they'd met, on a quiet Tuesday morning before the breakfast rush. He got down on one knee right there by table 6 and asked her to marry him, and Tessa said yes before he could finish the question. They got married 6 months later in a ceremony that blended both their worlds. The venue was elegant but not ostentatious. The guest list included billionaires and waitresses, business moguls and community college students. Tessa's mother cried through the entire ceremony. David gave a best man speech that roasted Lucas appropriately. Patricia Whitmore actually smiled. Tessa wore a dress that made her feel like a princess, and when Lucas saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about honesty and partnership and loving each other through whatever came next. I promise to never let money come between us, Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. To remember that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. To cherish you every day not as my wife but as Tessa, the woman who saw me when I was just a guy in a diner. Tessa's own vows were simpler but no less heartfelt. I promise to trust you, even when I'm scared, to be your partner, not your project, to love you for who you are, not what you have, to remind you that you're more than your bank account and I'm more than where I came from. We're just Lucas and Tessa, and that's enough. When they kissed, the entire room erupted in applause, but Tessa didn't hear it. All she heard was Lucas whispering against her lips, I love you. They honeymooned in Europe, which was overwhelming and magical all at once. Tessa had never been on a plane before, let alone to Paris or Rome or Barcelona. Lucas delighted in showing her everything, but his favorite moments were the quiet ones. Drinking coffee at a sidewalk cafe, walking through museums, lying in bed in their hotel room and talking until dawn. Are you happy? He asked her one night in Venice, deliriously. Are you? More than I ever thought possible. He pulled her closer. Do you ever regret it? The way things happened between us? Tessa thought about it seriously. I regret that you didn't tell me the truth sooner. But I don't regret us, not even a little bit. When they returned home, life settled into a new rhythm. Lucas continued running Whitmore Industries, but he made sure to leave work at the office. Tessa finished her prerequisites and got accepted into the nursing program. She'd insisted on paying her own tuition with money she'd saved, and Lucas hadn't argued, though she knew it drove him crazy. They bought a house together. Not a mansion, but a comfortable place in a nice neighborhood with a yard and a porch swing. Tessa insisted on contributing to the mortgage, even though her contribution was laughably small compared to Lucas's, but he understood why it mattered to her. We're partners, she said. Equal partners. Equal partners, he agreed, and he meant it. 2 years into their marriage, Tessa graduated from nursing school at the top of her class. Lucas was in the audience with her mother and brother, cheering louder than anyone else. She got a job at Riverside General Hospital in the emergency room, which was chaotic and exhausting and exactly what she'd dreamed of. Lucas sometimes came to pick her up after particularly rough shifts, and he'd hold her while she decompressed, telling him about the patients she'd saved and the ones she couldn't. He never tried to fix it or make it better, just listened and understood. 3 years into their marriage, Tessa came home from work with news that made her hands shake with excitement and terror. She found Lucas in his study, working on something for the company. I'm pregnant, she blurted out. Lucas dropped his pen. What? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I took 3 tests to be sure. He was across the room in seconds, pulling her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. We're having a baby. We're having a baby. They painted the nursery together, arguing good-naturedly about colors and themes. Tessa wanted something simple and practical. Lucas wanted to give their child everything he'd never had, which was ironic considering he'd grown up with actual everything. They compromised on a sunny yellow room with hand-painted animals on the walls that Lucas insisted on doing himself, despite having no artistic talent whatsoever. Tessa's pregnancy was relatively easy, and Lucas was insufferably attentive. He went to every doctor's appointment. He read pregnancy books cover to cover. He talked to her belly every night, telling their baby about all the things they'd do together. "I'm going to teach you about business," he said one night, his hand on Tessa's stomach. "But your mom is going to teach you about compassion. She's going to teach you that people matter more than profits and that kindness is never weakness." "You know about those things too," Tessa said softly. "I do now, because of you." Their daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in May, perfect and healthy and impossibly small. They named her Lily Rose, and the first time Lucas held her, Tessa saw him completely break down. This strong, capable man who ran a billion-dollar company reduced to tears by an 8-pound baby. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's absolutely perfect." Patricia and Leonard drove down immediately, and Tessa's mother practically moved in. David sent flowers and promised to visit as soon as finals were over. The diner staff sent a massive gift basket. Everyone wanted to meet the baby. But Tessa's favorite moments were the quiet ones, late at night when it was just the three of them. Lucas would rock Lily while Tessa recovered, singing off key lullabies and making promises about the kind of father he wanted to be. "I'm going to teach her that money doesn't define worth," he said one night. "That people are valuable because of who they are, not what they have. I'm going to make sure she understands how lucky she is, but also that luck comes with responsibility." "She's going to be amazing," Tessa said. "Because she has you as a father. Because she has both of us." When Lily was 6 months old, Lucas came home with an announcement. "I've been thinking about starting a foundation, something focused on education and job training for people from disadvantaged backgrounds. I want to create opportunities for people like you, people with talent and drive who just need a chance." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. "That's a wonderful idea. I want you to help run it, not just as my wife but as someone who's actually lived it. Who understands what it's like to want more but not have the resources. Lucas, I have a baby and a full-time job, so we'll make it work. We're partners, remember?" They launched the Whitmore Foundation a year later, and it became Lucas's passion project. They provided scholarships and job training, partnered with community colleges and vocational schools. They helped single mothers go back to school and gave second chances to people who'd made mistakes. Every success story felt personal, because Tessa knew it could have been her story if things had gone differently. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Tessa back to the diner where they'd met. It had been completely renovated now, modern and clean but still maintaining its essential character. They sat at table 6, just like they had that first morning, and ordered pancakes and hash browns. "You remember the first thing I said to you?" Lucas asked. "You asked what I recommended. And you actually told me the truth. You didn't try to upsell me or tell me what you thought I wanted to hear, just honest advice about the pancakes." Tessa smiled. "I was too tired to be anything but honest that day. Best timing of your life." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I know things haven't always been easy. I know there were times when the differences between our backgrounds caused problems. But I want you to know that choosing you was the best decision I ever made. Even better than starting a multi-billion-dollar company. Infinitely better. The company will outlast me probably. But what we have, what we've built together, that's actually meaningful. You make me want to be better, not richer or more successful, just better." Tessa squeezed his hand. "You make me believe I can do anything. You see potential in me that I never saw in myself. Because it was always there. I just helped you see it." They finished their pancakes, laughing about how Lily had learned to walk last week and immediately used her new skill to get into everything she shouldn't. They talked about their dreams for the future, the places they wanted to take her, the values they wanted to instill. When they left the diner, Lucas pulled Tessa close and kissed her forehead. "Thank you for taking a chance on me that day. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible." They walked to their car hand in hand, this unlikely pair who defied every expectation and stereotype. The girl from the wrong side of the tracks and the billionaire who'd wanted to be seen as just a man. They'd found something that money couldn't buy and circumstances couldn't diminish. They'd found each other, and in doing so, they'd found home. Years later, when people asked Tessa how she'd ended up married to Lucas Whitmore, she always told them the same thing. She'd served him pancakes, he'd left a good tip, and they'd both decided to be brave enough to try. The details were more complicated than that, of course, full of struggles and adjustments and learning to navigate two very different worlds. But the essence was simple. They'd fallen in love because they'd seen each other clearly, without the distortions of money or class or expectation. Just Lucas and Tessa, two people who'd met at exactly the right moment and decided to build something beautiful together. And they lived happily, messily, wonderfully ever after.